Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I'm Billy Embody. With me, Hayden Howerton, as always, as we get into our 2025 SMU football season breakdown. And it's all coming up on this edition of the On the Pony Express podcast, which starts right now.
This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody. Billy Embody. 1, 2, 3, let me go.
All right, we've got another jam-packed episode of the On the Pony Express podcast presented by our friends at StatusJet. Go to statusjet.com and learn about all the different options to help you get from point A to point B with that level of luxury that you'd expect with a private jet company. Mention On the Pony Express and get a discount on a round-trip flight. Hayden, SMU football season recap, 9-4 on the year. SMU football doesn't get it done getting to Charlotte for the ACC championship, but still a lot to be proud of, but of course a season of what-ifs as well.
I think that's the biggest thing is all of the what-ifs about the season. I mean, 9-4, yes, but you're 7 points away from really being 12-1. I mean, if for whatever reason that you don't get into the playoff, which obviously if you're sitting at 11-1, you're there in Charlotte, and who knows at that point. So definitely disappointing on that front. But when you look at the positives of going 9-4, it's only the 12th time in SMU history that you've won at least 9 games. I mean, that is something that cannot be taken for granted, especially when SMU is in the caliber of league that is the ACC, where, Billy, I think 2 years ago when we did our, projections for where SMU would be, I think before year one in the ACC, I said, I think we're going 6-6 or maybe 7-5. And to turn around, go to the playoff, have the great success that you did in 2024, yeah, that spoils you a little bit to where 9-4 to some feels like a disappointment. And I'm going to look at it as glass half full with all of the adversity that you had with Kevin getting hurt and really playing on one leg for that entire season. You're able to go beat Miami. You beat Clemson. I mean, I'm not satisfied with 9-4, but I'm happy, if that makes sense.
I mean, it totally does. It makes sense. And here's why. Like, you have a team that was so close on 3 games in particular that you're looking for a bounce here, a bounce there, the other way. And for whatever reason, this team just didn't have that killer instinct in a sense, in key moments this year at a consistent level, right? Like they had the ability to close out Miami. Awesome. Louisville, same thing. They beat the brakes off them, but you didn't have that same killer, I almost think, ability in a sense with the team that they had this year, because you couldn't get into some of these situations where you could really affect the quarterback, I think, from the interior of the defensive line. So when they were up big or they were up in some of these games, they couldn't collapse the pocket like they wanted to, I think. And that hurt defensively. And of course, the secondary had struggles, which who would have imagined some of the things in the secondary that would have happened, honestly. And then you have Kevin getting hurt. You had J. Hud getting hurt early. You had RJ clearly not 100%. Run game was kind of up and down, trying to figure out who was the hot hand at times. So it wasn't perfect, but here's one thing that I'll say, and it was conveyed to me, by a couple of people that I trust, and they have a good feel for the team, and they have a good feel for the direction of the program and things like that. You always want to have a high floor as a program, and this is where, I mean, truthfully, I kind of got it wrong with Brian Kelly in a sense at LSU. I thought Brian Kelly would always have them winning 9 games minimum and really winning 10 games consistently. Brian Kelly just couldn't win the big game. I thought, okay, he'll just have all these resources. He'll be fine. He'll kind of do what he did at Notre Dame in a sense. And he didn't. I think Rhett Lashley and the staff and where they have this program, and it'll be contingent in 27 and beyond, but getting that quarterback that can be as good as Kevin has been, they're going to always have that floor of a 9-win season. And especially, I think, as the ACC gets into 9 games in the league, that's even better for SMU for obvious reasons. They seem to play better against ACC competition, but you have a team that should be sitting at a 9-win floor. And just talking with a couple of people on staff, they feel like 9 wins, 10 wins next year is kind of that floor again. And how can you argue with that? You could look up at SMU's schedule next year, and we'll do that at a later date. But you can look there right off the bat, and you could say, based on the body of work that SMU's given over the last couple of years in the ACC, okay, Notre Dame, let's just go ahead and say it's a loss. But it's not in Sharpie because of what happened against Miami.
Yeah.
And what happened by them beating Clemson. And a lot of the teams on that schedule for SMU are kind of all over the place. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy to get to 9, 10 wins again, but that's the life in the Power 4 conference. So to get to 9 wins, and really 8-4 in particular, 8-4 was just gut-wrenching the way it got there, which is what is frustrating for people. But I would take that over, team not showing up for, certain games and being blown out, like a East Carolina 2020. I mean, those two things. Sorry about it, but like, that's just off the top of my head. So one that is just ingrained in my mind. I don't know. It's you've got to be, as long as the floor is that 9 win, 8 to 9, 8 regular season, but 9 really. That's what you want.
Close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades.
Correct.
I mean, ultimately, they didn't get it done. Yes, Wake Forest made, again, for the second time in 13 months, the kick of a lifetime against SMU.
Yeah.
Where it's good by 6 inches. But you don't give up the 15-yard pass the play before. They're not even attempting a field goal.
Yeah.
You look at
and
Baylor.
If you get a face mask call on the drive prior, the game's over.
Exactly. Exactly. So ball's shaped weird. It's not always going to bounce your way. I think in 2024, the ball bounced our way a ton. Maybe it was just, hey, if we got all of them last year, maybe we got none of them this year.
Yep.
Of this team, just in those games that you think about those 3 losses. Okay. Cal, you can pretty much chalk that one up to just didn't get off the bus. All right, we'll get that out of the way. There's no really one play that kind of stands out in that game to me yet. Baylor, okay, 3 missed field goals. You bench the kicker the next week. You pretty much solved that problem in a way. Right after that, try to nip that in the bud, and then obviously, the Wake Forest game that we just talked about. But I was impressed by a lot of individual efforts that I frankly didn't see coming after the end of 2024 season.
I agree. Yeah.
So,
and before we get into those, I want to say, like, when you go kind of piece by piece on this team, outside of really getting to the secondary, you're like, man, how'd this team win 8 games? Like, but in the standpoint of, man, again, the bounces, but they really should have won. They should have gone to the college football playoff. And it hurts. It hurts.
Hurts my heart, hurts us. Unfortunately. But I want to talk about my most improved player from 2024 to 2025. And it's probably a guy that you're not anticipating me saying, because he's such a talented athlete, just God-given. And that's Savion Byrd. I mean, last year, I look at the inconsistency that he played with. It seemed like he was good for a holding and a false start every single game, plus, a sack against TJ Parker. It was a strip sack at that. And there were kind of some of those moments last year where it's just like, man, Savion, if you ever figured it out, you would be such a good player. And then he turned around this year and he dominated some dudes, man. I mean, it was fun watching 54 out there on the edge. And what was encouraging to me is when I was with this staff, just kind of in my downtime from the NFL, hanging out with the offensive line a little bit, Savion was a guy that we talked about as a career left tackle. He can never play anything but left tackle. He's just hardwired to play that position. You saw him this year. He played right tackle. He played some guard at times where he was versatile. He was a true team player this year. And I'm so happy that he was able to cap his SMU career with a season like he had.
I'm glad you mentioned Savion. He's never, ever going to get enough flowers because of, he gets out there on the island with some freak shows from time to time. But, man, he was able to do just enough to slow down that Miami pass rush, just enough to have a team win against Miami. And Kevin Jennings, he finishes 6th in the country in passing yards. I mean, if you would have told me that before this season, I would have said, okay, SMU's definitely in the college football playoff, number one. But you've got to have an offensive line that can protect. And if you and especially a guy that loses a lot of his mobility, throughout the year, it makes it even more difficult. So, good pick there. Most improved for me. I'm gonna go with Brandon Maiazono. I just
Great
think
pick.
and I mean that, like, just you could have picked either Brandon in a sense, just because they were taking different levels of jumps, right? Like Brandon Booker was coming into his second year of the program. You're sitting there saying, okay, wow, he's able to play a ton of snaps, but his jump up was really solid. But Brandon Maiazono had been here forever, and then gets his opportunity and ends up overtaking Zakai Barker really, and getting a stranglehold on that other linebacker spot and playing really, really well. So I go with Brandon Maiazono. You just look back at him and you've got to think that, especially with the injuries early, SMU doesn't have the season that it has defensively, I think, in terms of stopping the run. And it was kind of like a little up and down early on as he got settled in, and as Book got settled in, and they were missing Kilgore and Zakai Barker. But, you look at what they were able to do, stopping the run this year. It's a big part of those linebackers, in particular, Brandon Maiazono.
Biggest surprise. So I'm gonna. This is a new. We didn't do this one last year, but this is a player that coming in probably didn't carry a ton of hype. Is somebody that you just kind of looked at in the transfer portal. Was like, oh, okay, cool. But Ymir Knight to be not only the third leading receiver on this SMU team with 54 receptions, 637 yards, and 5 touchdowns, including a long of 61. He also became a stud punt returner. I mean, having a guy that, one, is brave enough to field some of those punts that would either be corner kicks or, just kind of that feeling of the ball being up in the air for 5 seconds is so scary. And I know this is an offensive lineman talking, but that is so hard for those guys to do at a high level. And did he break a big return this year? No. I think maybe it's coming next year. I mean, if, maybe he gets a couple blocks here and there, but ultimately just to have that ability to go out and keep the field position battle swinging in SMU's direction was critical at certain points in the year. And then he goes out and is the Holiday Bowl offensive MVP, where he did enough in a night that in the second half, Kevin Jennings was off. You couldn't really run the ball, and he was able to do a good enough job to get the offense almost willed down the field at times and to be able to keep drives going. So a great year for Ymir Knight. I'm glad to get him back next year as well.
I'm going to go with another guy that I just mentioned early, on in this podcast. I'm going to go with Brandon Booker. I think you look at what he was able to do, as far as tackling. He ends up being he ends up being the number one tackler from the linebacker position. 69 tackles on the year, 3 tackles for loss, had a half sack, had 2 breakups, few quarterback hurries. Just somebody that has a whole nother year in the weight room ahead of him that he's going to, I mean, it almost looked like he was bulking during the season too, at least to me. I know that sounds strange, but he just felt like he was getting bigger and bigger and more impactful as the season went on. And I've been a huge Brandon Booker fan since his days at DeSoto. I watched him play defensive end, linebacker, safety, just doing all sorts of things for DeSoto. And I said, if there's a guy who just plays football the right way, and really you look back at him, he was trying to go to Stanford and he didn't get in, which is hard to do. It's not a knock on him, and ends up at SMU because of it. What a win. So what a win to see him get into this role this year. And you look at the linebacker core for 2026 because of that development. I mean, it completely changed how they're looking at that group. You're looking at next year saying, okay, well, probably obviously you got to retain Kilgore, got to retain Maiazono, There are older guys. They're proven. I guess we'll retain Justin Medlock and Zakai Barker or go out and get somebody proven instead to replace both of them. No, now you go have Brandon Booker, who's, I think, going to have a huge season. If you're looking for a way early bold prediction, he can have like a Rasheem Biles type of season next year for SMU. He was carrying the ball for DeSoto as well. Just making plays on offense. He's that fast. He is such a difference maker. And you didn't even realize it until the end of the season when you look up and who's the top tackler from the linebacker position. I was shocked. So bigger surprise for sure.
That's insane. That's a great pull. I had forgotten about the fact that we kind of lucked into that when he couldn't get into Stanford. But when looking at the linebacker position group, I think overall from a room standpoint was my biggest surprise as well. So I'm with you on that. The mentality that unit brought was something that had been missing from that spot. Yes, there have been great linebackers that have come through SMU, but something about that dog, Brian Bosworth, whatever you do, I'm the end of the road for you. And to watch those linebackers go out and just out physical guys. One of the plays of the year was Maya Zono. Just stonewalling him on the goal line and breaking up that pass because, we're talking about Miami 27-20 win if they're able to get in the end zone there.
Yeah, no doubt. Speaking of a nice surprise, it is always a nice surprise to walk into a LaLa Land Kind Cafe. And because you never know just how it's going to make you feel each and every time, because all of the cafes that they have around the country are all very similar in terms of being bright and all of those things, but it's the people in the LaLa Land Kind Cafes that make it, and they surprise you, and they surprise you, even though it's right there in their mission is to be kind and spread kindness. And each time I go in there, it's an extra, hey, how's your day going? Or got anything planned? Or, they hand you the cup of coffee or your, little pastry or croissant or whatever you got. And they just do it with that extra piece of kindness. And I think we can all buy into that. And that's why we've, partnered with them. We've partnered with the LaLa Land Foundation, and we can normalize that kindness and, not only do it when we're trying to be charitable, but do it every single day as far as what we do in our lives. And so the LaLa Land Foundation, go to lalalandfoundation.com, has many ways you can get involved as you help young adults transition into adulthood, especially out of the foster care system. You can donate your time, donate your money, donate mentoring or scholarship or all sorts of different ways through events as well to help out the LaLa Land Foundation. And they're such a great partner for us. We're looking forward to many, many things ahead with them in 2026. But our friends at the LaLa Land Foundation were a nice surprise there during the course of football season that we got partnered up with, that we're excited to do much more with in 26.
And people make such a big difference, as far as great people kind of set the culture and everything else runs off of that. That's why my biggest loss
great segue.
As SMU turns the page in 2026 is going to be Matthew Hibner. I'm going to miss Hibby, man. The offense, it looked like at times in 2024, it ran through him after RJ Maryland went down. And that was such a scary time after he tore his ACL against Stanford. And then for Matthew Hibner to kind of pick up the torch, and, you think about the long catch and runs that he had against Cal. I know he had one last year. And then to kind of get going early on this year as well. And you talk about the fact that he was such a great blocker on the edge, a very underrated tool that he carried in his tool bag. Being a true Y tight end, a George Kittle, kind of one of those types where I think he's probably a 4th or 5th round pick. Just I need to look at the tight end class this year for the NFL draft, but he's certainly a guy that I anticipate hearing his name called in April, because in terms of consistently playing at a high level, he was hands down the best offensive player.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot. I could go TJ Harden too, and it's almost cheating because we know some of what's coming into the portal and we know who's coming back and all that stuff. But man, I'm going to go with Ahmad Moses. I mean, he is so good. I mean, he is just, and I feel like this year, I think we saw, and some people might be like, I don't know about this, but I think we saw the best version of Ahmad Moses as far as being everything for this football team. He had to play nickel at times. He had to play, high safety. He had to do this. He had to do that. He had to help out a young linebacking core get lined up. He had, different guys at the nickel position. It seemed like every single week. It was a lot on him. And for him to play at such a high level, and he ends up being the team leader with 104 tackles on the year, 5.5 tackles for loss, 5 interceptions on the season. Dude is just a boss. He should get more and more All-American, nods. I think if SMU would have played for an ACC championship, that could have helped. But just what a stud. I'm going to miss him. That is the downside of like what we're starting to leave with some of these COVID years and things like that. Man, 4 years of Ahmad Moses cruised by. Can't believe it. Seems like just yesterday I was doing his signing day, because 4 years ago, no, 5 years ago, and next month was, when I met Michelle. And so it was right in that time where I was like, hey, sorry, we're, just kind of still getting going here, but I got to go to this guy's, signing day press conference. And I mean, he was just under the radar, flipped from UTSA. I mean, what a huge kind of program changing pickup he was. And a good dude too. So I'm going to miss Ahmad.
He got hotter as the season went on too, which was, I mean, so he had a 95-yard pick six against East Texas A&M, which was great, but
good.
4 tackles in that game, 8, 6, 6, 9, 11, 6, 4, 15, 4, 8, and then he finishes with back-to-back double-digit tackle days against Cal and Arizona. So
he'll play special teams.
Yeah, he will. I mean, I'm excited that we're going to go cover him at the East-West Shrine Bowl.
Yeah, big win, big dub for the pod,
no doubt. He'll be missed as well. He's another one of those guys, and I felt bad in his post-game press conference. I should have asked him more questions, but we'll get him back on for you guys during East-West Shrine Bowl.
Yeah.
Biggest what if this is the season of what if, Billy? I feel like there's a lot. So what is the biggest what if? I will start by saying if SMU beats Baylor, because with the 3 missed field goals in that game, that feels like the biggest missed opportunity for me. Because if you beat them, you go into the TCU game at 3-0, which who knows, maybe you have higher confidence. Maybe you play a lot better against Missouri State because you're not tight, you're not coming off a loss where it was hard to practice, all those things. You probably just have more momentum at that point. And okay, so let's say you still lose to TCU. You're sitting at 1 loss to your arch rival. You're feeling pretty good about beating a very talented offense, which, look, I know Baylor missed a bowl game, but at the time of that game, that offense was looked at by us, by around the country, as one of the top units in the nation. And I know they put up 48 on us, but if you make one of those field goals, if it's the one in regulation, they're not putting up more than 40.
Yep.
And so it would definitely feel better at 10-3, even if everything else sticks. And the reason for me not saying that my biggest disappointment is Wake and Cal is just effort, and the effort piece and the attitude piece is such a huge what if, while Baylor can kind of be boiled down to those special team blunders.
Yeah, I think Baylor was a tough matchup, and I like. You look back on it now and you're like, okay, all right. Like, and we said it in the offseason, like CJ Sanders was going to be one of the biggest losses of off that 2024 team, like arguably the biggest. And that nickel position got torched against Baylor, and it did. And it was not pretty. And there were a lot of other issues in the secondary of that game too. And they couldn't get home, and you had an opportunity to close out the game, and you can offensively. I am going to pick Wake though. And Wake, I thought the defense brought it, number one, against, a good running back, against an offense that, quarterback wise, it was bad. But they got right, they were ready to go. And there were just so many kind of like moments of that game, and it was circled as a trap game going in, and you knew like it was homecoming for them. I mean, all like everything, like you talked about it. Maybe you talked about it too much, but I, as an SMU alum, probably the most disappointing game, honestly, ever covered. And maybe I'm missing one. Maybe there's one that really just should stand out. But I think relative to where the program is now and all of that, like there's, for up until 2023, we've really been conditioned to be like, okay, SMU is going to go somewhere around 7-5. And that was the best of it, since Chad got there in June and had kind of revived that and kind of made that kind of the standard. But so you were always expecting something to go wrong. But over this course of success, you're like, okay, I'm a big believer, and I still will take this that Wake was just not as good as like metrics, as good as this product of their schedule, all of those things. And so for that reason, that is the biggest what if, because if you just have one play go, Kevin gets the first down, face mask gets called, pass play. I mean, it was a good call. It was a good like blitz. They had two guys right there around the pass that set up the game-winning field goal. I mean, so many things. Matthew Hibner gets hurt in that game, and trip like there's a blown protection. Kevin gets sacked. That's their only touchdown of the game, right? I think only touchdown of the game.
Yep.
Yeah, and there's just such a fine line of execution in that one, and I like just. That's the one you needed to make this whole season end up in Charlotte. And Cal, you could have like, okay, they're going to have a new coach. They're going to be fired up to play. They weren't bad.
Yeah.
I mean, Cal really wasn't bad. They just finally lost to Stanford. So they're like, all right, we're making a change. Like Cal had beaten Louisville. You knew what you were getting into from a talent like perspective. But the Wake game, like that is the most disappointing, because when you needed, and I know that one sticks in Rhett's craw, and they obviously fixed it the next week, but that's the one where like, all right, that one offensive staff wise, like you had to have come up with something that fixed that game to get through it, and you didn't.
SMU also missed an extra point in that game.
Blocked.
Yeah, blocked.
Yeah.
And I know, like, I kind of hang my hat on my streak, and like, life isn't all about streaks, but I certainly didn't anticipate the undefeated conference record to fall at the hands of Wake Forest.
Yeah.
I was anticipating it happening against Miami.
Yeah, that's why Brett even like I mean, kind of thought he going into Clemson, he kind of talked about it in the press conference leading up to it. I think it's kind of like, wow, this is interesting. You're going on the road to face Clemson, big game, and you bring up the streak. I was like, that was where it was like, okay, this one might get dicey, but no, they handled Clemson. They just wild. That is definitely my biggest what if, because it can go to Charlotte and then really what if?
I guess we would have been clinched at the point you're playing Cal, or it
yes,
wouldn't have mattered anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, I get that. Worst moment of the year. So one worst moment. I'm gonna say the arm punt by Josh Hoover that somehow was completed in the SMU TCU game, because that took me all the way back to 2017. It's like, I've seen this play before. This cannot be happening. For that ball to be completed around 5 DBs and one dude jumps, and it's not somebody who's wearing a blue jersey, is unacceptable. I couldn't believe my eyes when it happened. I still can't believe that happened now. I still can't believe the 2017 touchdown happened, but that game was a blowout, so it didn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. But then it kind of snowballs with the 2 broken tackle, long touchdowns, and it's just like, wow, that was the straw that broke the camel's back.
I am going to keep this much shorter than the what if, I hope. And I'm down to two. One is the big 50-yard Baylor touchdown. That was when I was like, "Ooh, God, that was the absolute worst thing that SMU kind of needed there." And honestly, there's a third here. I guess that when they picked up the flag on Kevin, I was like, "Oh man, that's not good." They picked up the flag on the targeting that pushed them back, and then did they miss the field goal that would have won the game in regulation?
Yeah, that's what happened.
Yeah.
Not to
Or
mention
was that they missed it in overtime? One of the two. They missed it.
well, they missed one at the end of regulation.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
That would have won the game. It just ended up going into overtime. It was tied.
Yeah.
Because when they threw that flag, everybody went nuts, like they'd won the game because it was going to be 15 yards closer.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was pretty bad. I will go with this, and I kind of forgot about this piece. I am one of Kevin Jennings' biggest defenders, but when he didn't get that first down against Wake, like my guy, like,
Yeah.
I mean, I've ridden Kevin Jennings was the right move. This was a competition before the 2024 season. Here's why. Here's what he brings. He next year, and maybe it's a preservation thing, whatever, during the regular season. But dude, you gotta get that first down. You've got to improve. You've got to improve your field awareness. And you can't get hurt in the bowl game like George Kittle just got hurt for the 49ers, is out all of next year, obviously playing in the playoffs. But like, I would love to see Kevin Jennings get some of those. Like, learn to dive forward. Like, you got to I don't know. You got to, what is it? Kind of like a corkscrew and land on your back and slide forward. I don't know. But that is probably that's the worst one of the year. That, because of obviously what it led to with the what if, is coming up short on that first down. Anyway, okay, let's move on. Do you have anything else?
Well, I was also going to add in the fact that the ref sacked Kevin Jennings in that Baylor game.
Yeah, thank goodness SMU won that game, because that would have been. Oh, in that game that
was in the Baylor game. We did not win that game.
Oh, the Baylor game was the sack?
Yes.
I thought it was Miami for some reason.
No, I'm like,
you're probably right.
Yeah,
I mean, you're
like
probably right.
99% sure it was in the Baylor game, and that's why it was such a horrible moment.
Because didn't that push them back and they missed field goal?
And or
they settled for a field goal at the end of the half because of that.
Yeah, I think that was settling for a field goal.
But. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we need somebody to come in and fix all of these issues, from the biggest what if to the worst moments. When your business is having those worst moments, make sure you reach out to our friends at OPW Solutions, SMU owned. AJ Crow and Company can help your business in commercial landscaping, power washing, snow and ice control, parking lot services, Christmas lights being taken down now, fence maintenance, concrete repair, all sorts of commercial services for your business. Make sure you reach out to OPW Solutions. Contact OPW Solutions at 214-444-2305 or email them info@opwsolutions.com, and make sure you tell them that On the Pony Express sent you. And if you're in North Texas, Oklahoma, or Arkansas, you can get serviced by our friends at OPW Solutions. So make sure you reach out to them today and get hooked up with their attention to detail, care, and all of the things that you'd expect your company to get when you get all those things taken care of.
A little more positive note.
Yeah, we're on to the positive side of the season.
Yep.
I think
we're on the upswing. Best moment of the year. So while I am staring at the framed Miami field rushing poster, I'm actually going to say it's beating Clemson on the road, which, for the record, if Eric McLean is watching this, yes, you still owe me barbecue over that game. But SMU avenged that 2024 ACC championship game loss, and you go on the road to Clemson, to Death Valley. Great trip, by the way. For those of y'all that didn't go the next time SMU is up there. It's such a cool place to go and visit. All the times that Eric McLean has told the story about how cool the campus is, the environment, all that, it all lives up to the hype. But SMU is able to rush for 139 when Clemson rushed for 35. And I want to say they had -2 yards in the first half on the ground. where it was one of those performances where SMU came out, they set the tone early, they were able to play from ahead on the road, silence Death Valley, and you're able to get out of there with a win where you really put the exclamation point at the end when things got dicey and you're able to pull this one out. So you stuff Peter Woods on 4th down. I mean, there were so many moments from that game where it could have swung in Clemson's direction. You know, KJ getting hurt and everybody in our section just goes, it's over. Yeah, the game is over. I mean, no disrespect to Ty Hawkins, but I wouldn't exactly want my first meaningful playing time experience to come in Death Valley. I mean, that's not a recipe for success for a young quarterback. And out comes Kevin, and he throws a bomb to Jordan Hudson down the sideline. It's like, okay, I guess we're so back. But that game for me was a little bit made up for the Baylor and the TCU game, to go beat that brand on the road and just be able to get it done with this group. And all the Clemson faithful, I'm sure, are going to be in the comments. Be sure to get in the comments, like, comment, subscribe, and battle them when they say that, oh, Cade Klubnik wasn't playing. Well, when you look at that game, their quarterback played exceptionally well.
Yeah, it was
awesome. Vizina, I'm trying to remember. Yep. He balled out. So I don't really think it would have made a difference if Klubnik was in that game.
If anything, I would say that the way Klubnik had played so far that year, I mean, I don't know. He was gripping the stick pretty tight for the most part that season. So who knows? Vizina was able to come out and just drop some bombs on SMU to keep that game close. Otherwise, it's not. Best moment, I think Miami is super easy. That one really stood out to me just because, I think coming off of the Wake game, kind of similar to the Holiday Bowl, and I almost picked the Holiday Bowl just because personally I needed SMU to win. When clock was striking midnight at that party we were at, I was like, hey guys, we need this one. We don't need the board being whatever. But the Miami game was the best. I mean, there's so many viral moments from that game. That's a game that people are going to talk about forever. And, when you look at this season, you'll always have that.
Yeah.
And there's I really think when you're 5 years away from the season, you say, man, that was a pretty good SMU team. They had some things that didn't go their way, but damn, we beat Miami. You're going to tell your friends about it. If you canceled your flight after the Wake Forest game to not be at homecoming, you're going to be like, should have been there, wasn't. Big mistake, huge type of mistake there to not be in Ford for that game. And I think that game, when you look at the future of this program, and friend of the show, of course, Bill Armstrong mentioned some conversations around what's next for Ford Stadium after being at Snapdragon, that type of a game, and then you add a bigger stadium into the mix for SMU. That's what SMU is going for. That's the type of level you want Ford Stadium to be at. And you want to continue to build on that level of production, that level of entertainment, that level of experience that SMU showed in that Miami game. Massive moment for the program. I think, they capitalized on it well until they got to the Cal game. I mean, they didn't, not show up against, the rest of the schedule right after that. They played BC and took care of business, did all those things. But, that Miami game we're always going to have. And that was a big deal.
If Miami wins the national championship on Monday night, go ahead and hang the banner in Ford Stadium.
Well, SMU basketball sweeping UConn and SMU football beating Miami, that's just what we do. We just lock in national championships for other people, apparently.
Rate the season on the scale from Penn State to Indiana.
This is a great part of the show. The way you tee that up, the Penn State. And for those that don't know, Hayden does the rundown. So Hayden plans the show. Sometimes we go off script. Sometimes I go off script, whatever. But when I saw Rate the Season, I missed this piece where you're like, okay, Penn State to Indiana, and I love the way you set that up.
So I'm gonna compare this season to the Iowa Hawkeyes. Here's why. Start the season ranked. You lose to your arch rival. They lose to Iowa State. You win a couple. They lose to Indiana, which I would say that our loss against Wake is way worse than losing to number 11 Indiana. You go on a little bit of a run. They lose a couple games down the stretch, but then in their bowl game, they beat a ranked Vanderbilt team. So all in all, I'm sure a disappointing season for an Iowa team that was in talks to be in the playoff at some point, but ultimately end on a high note. And when I compare that to SMU, I think this season is disappointing moments, not disappointing play. The season really came down to 3 plays. Missed field goal against Baylor, the long pass that set up the Wake Forest miracle field goal. And then while you were doing that most recent ad break, I was looking for a play against Cal. The first series out of the half, we went 3 and out. We had a long third down, and we come up 3 yards short of the first down. So we go 3 and out, led to a Cal touchdown, and the deficit becomes 24-7. Convert that third down. And who knows? Maybe SMU drives the field. Maybe they score a touchdown. They get right back in it. Then it would have become a 17-14 ball game instead of a 24-7. And I think at that point, SMU would have gotten some confidence back. And, then who knows? Maybe we'd be playing on Monday night. But
even like if everything else plays out, even if you pick up that first down, then, let's say you go 6 and out. I mean, that's not enough time for, well, I guess that might not be enough time for Cal to go down the field, but
yeah.
Who knows? I mean,
to get their last second touchdown that they had to take the lead.
Yeah.
But look, I'm encouraged by the culture. And before everybody jumps at my throat and is like, well, we were one of the most penalized team in the country, and we lost all of the games that we had a fourth quarter lead. SMU has never lost back-to-back conference games under Rhett Lashley. The team responded when it needed to against big-time opponents. Miami, Clemson, Louisville showed what this team could have been in 2025. But like I said earlier in the show, Billy, the ball is weirdly shaped. Bounces didn't go your way at times. And so we'll look back at this season in 5 and 10 years, and yes, we'll always have Miami, but we'll also be like, man, what if?
Yeah. I think this season, I'm trying to think of a comp for this year's team. I mean, you could argue like Texas-ish. I mean, a team that doesn't really have a way to advocate for itself to be in the college football playoff. There's no doubt SMU lost that on its own. Texas lost that on its own. Texas had some big moments in their 2025 season. That is something that stands out to me, of course. But, they also had a loss to Florida. SMU had a loss to Wake Forest. They went up against an Ohio State, and, their offense kind of didn't get off the bus. Their defense played great. They beat a top 10 Vandy team. They beat Oklahoma, who didn't have the quarterback or what have you. But, they beat Texas A&M. There's your Miami kind of game in a sense. And SMU Miami, not a rivalry, but man, it'd be great if it turned into one. We all know why. But, then they go out and they beat Michigan in the bowl game. And granted, these two teams were totally different in the bowl game. But I think that's because SMU could very well end up in the top 25 when it's all said and done. But Texas had no basis to really sit there and be like, oh, yeah, we deserve to be in the playoff. Like, no. Yeah. You had a couple of nice wins, no doubt about it. But you also had some really rough losses too. So, and again, it's all relative. They played a difficult schedule, but I think that's Texas fans probably have a similar level of disappointment to SMU fans. I mean, I think maybe I'm wrong. Maybe some people are going to jump right down my throat in the comment section of that. But like you think about it, big time quarterback coming back. You really thought your defense was going to be like nails. I think SMU's offense struggled at times to be like overly explosive. And so Kevin ends up throwing for a bunch of yards, but he's got to do it all. Texas, their skill players were like really average this year. That's the thing when you look at Texas for next year. Okay, cool. They got Cam Coleman today as we're recording this. But I mean, who else really do you love at their wide receiver position? They let one of their better ones go in Parker Livingstone. Yeah, they got Hollywood Smothers down the backfield, but I don't know. It's going to be interesting to watch them unfold next year. But I would say like a Texas level. I think there were super high expectations, especially internally for SMU. You think that if you're SMU, I mean, based off last year, you're better going into the season than TCU and Baylor. You know, if you're Texas, you're going up to Ohio State and you're thinking, we've got a team that can beat them. And they did. They just kind of, I mean, I thought the coaching was bad in that game offensively, but I don't know. That's my rating, like, for SMU. I think Texas and SMU fans have similar levels of disappointment.
That's a good pull. I will say Arch played horrendous in that game against Ohio State, but
I think like the wide receivers couldn't create separation because they didn't recruit very good ones.
Agreed. Yeah.
You know, like
Ryan Wingo has not panned out.
No, he's like he should bulk up and be RJ Maryland.
Yeah. I mean, seriously. So anyway, for our individual award of the season, MVP, per se, and there's a lot of guys that are deserving. I'm going to give this out, and again, number 6 passer in the country. I mean, I'm going to give it to KJ, not because of so much what he did on the field, but more of the fact that he was injured all year long. And I feel bad for Ty Hawkins, getting thrown in there a couple games. I'm so glad they preserved his red shirt, but man, Kevin couldn't be stopped, man. He'd just be running right back on the field off the sideline, with a full limp, can't even call it a gait. And he get out there and just sling it. So he still needs some growth this offseason. I mean, like you talked about with not getting the first down against Wake, he did the same thing against Arizona, and I thought it was going to cost us there. But he just needs to be able to flush his mistakes. I mean, he's such a good quarterback. If he's able to just let it go, whatever just happened, and not let these mistakes snowball. I mean, again, not to jump on the KJ Heisman train way too early, but he has a nice game week 1. Who knows? He starts building some of that resume, and he ends up in New York. Hopefully the team's in the playoff next year, but they're going to put some weapons around him. I mean, we're starting to look at transfer portal and everything that SMU is going to do to take advantage of his 5th and final season as an SMU Mustang. I mean, the sky is going to be the limit with him and with this team next year. It's just going to be about how can he minimize some of these mistakes that he made in 2025.
I agree. And look, I don't want to pick the exact same MVP as you, just because mix it up for everybody. I would pick KJ again. I think he did so much by himself this year as well. And I hate it on many levels that the second half played out the way it did against, Arizona. I think a lot of that could have been avoided by him, no doubt, throwing the ball away. But 2, I also feel like they should have been running the ball more. I mean, they should have been running the ball. 2nd and 2, just pick up a first down, keep moving, and that could have changed so many things. But anyway, ready? Talked about the high bowl. I mean, you just ripped off an 8-yard run. I'm just saying.
But I forgot all about that. Oh my God.
Yeah, like that 3 and out, didn't help. Just run it. Just do it. Just pick up 1 first down and then keep moving. 24-0. Like, anyway. But also catch the ball, Jordan Hudson. So anyway, we move on. I digress. I'm not going to pick KJ, but he also did not have that was his only multi-interception game outside the TCU game. And those 2 picks were basically like trying to make things happen late, down double digits. So yeah. Anyway, my MVP, I am going to go, man, I think I would say Terry Webb. I mean, I know that's kind of off the reservation. Ahmad Moses, I've sung his praise. I should give it to him. I mean, that's probably who I should give it to. But if SMU doesn't have Terry Webb in the middle of that defense, really scary stuff. I thought he, obviously played better than Jeffrey Emba. I think overall, consistently throughout the year, we pegged him before the season as somebody that was going to have some NFL traits that people liked. He ended up leading the defensive line in tackles. With 46 on the year, he had 7 tackles for loss. He had 5.5 sacks. So a really good one-year guy. We're going to miss him. He's a good dude too. So I thought he was a good leader for that room. And, I think there are certain games that SMU's not. Was he involved in the 4th and 1 stuff as well? Kind of maybe blowing it up a little bit at Clemson. I don't know, probably wrong on that, but I feel like he had a couple of huge moments in the course of the season, and SMU was nails on 3rd and 4th and short. Yeah, it was crazy how good they were at it. So I go with Terry Webb. If SMU doesn't have him, I mean, it's my opinion.
The 3rd and short is what kept us in a lot of these games.
Yeah, Baylor game. I mean, think about how many times Baylor went for it early in that game. SMU was able to sniff them out a couple times.
Baylor had a super experienced offensive line too. Like the center and the right tackle are brothers. Like all kinds of chemistry on that offensive line, and played pretty well.
Yeah,
against them on the defensive front. But man, what a year! I can't. Went way too fast, dude. I can't believe we're already in January.
That's nuts. It's nuts. And look, there is a great thing to be fired up about for this new year. And we encourage you guys to visit our friends at SportsMo. That's Sports MO. Go to sportsmo.org and download their app. And they just expanded to men's and women's basketball. So huge moment for SportsMo to now be able to pledge micro donations to your favorite college team, SMU, everybody listen to this pod. And you can support your team through these micro pledges on points, 3-pointers, a win, loss. So look at that for the basketball angle. We know about the football side. We've been making those micro donations all year. But learn more about our friends at SportsMo today and download their app, sign up, and dump some money into that account and start supporting SMU athletics.
SportsMo lets you make a more direct impact on the game because it lets you, the fans, fund your favorite college football teams in a straightforward way. In a you win and I'll give way. In a I need you to show me your running game is alive and then I'll donate way. These real-time tax-deductible microfunds lead to impact your team can feel. Every cent you send mixes with every drop of sweat they put in. Form your squad. Boost your friends when a play comes through. A new way to follow the game. And cha-ching, your favorite team. So what do you say, difference makers? Ready to power the play? SportsMo. Download today. Let's Smo.
That's right. Let's Smo and look ahead to 2026 for these SMU Mustangs.
This is way too early,
but
early. I'm going to do it anyway because this is our show. But I think SMU has the best schedule in the ACC in 2026. When you look at the schedule, just the teams on it, because at the time of recording, we don't have when these games are, besides UC Davis and Missouri State, which will both be in September, at Notre Dame, at Florida State. So let's just pretend for a moment that we lose both of those games. At Louisville, I think is a win. Boston College at home, we better win that one. Cal at home, think we get revenge. Virginia at home, no Chandler Morris, think that'll be a win. Virginia Tech, first year of James Franklin, I think that'll be a win. Wake Forest at home, Lightning will not strike twice. I think that's a win. At Stanford, better be a win. And at Syracuse is probably the trap game, just depending on when in the year it is. But again, should be a win. So I think at worst, you're looking at 10-2 and 8-1 in the ACC. It's Kevin's 5th year, and I've seen on the board people are joking that all we're doing is assembling the G5 Avengers in the portal. But guys, they've gotten some really nice pickups. Really, really nice. Where I don't care that these guys played in the American, because guess what? So did Cortland Sutton. So did James Prochet. Shane Buechele, Tanner Moore. All these guys. When you talk about the SMU Mount Rushmore, we don't. Besides Eric Dickerson era, all of the guys you think about have played in G5 competition. So I wish the guys that are leaving in the transfer portal well, as we are losing some. But I think at the Wake Forest game, we were there on the field, and we're like, okay, he's a starter. He won't be here next year. As in, we're going to replace him. He's a starter. We'll replace him. He's a starter. We'll replace him. Where I think SMU is only going to get better in the transfer portal this offseason.
I think looking at, and again, we're recording this for those of you guys who are watching this. We recorded this Sunday night. Okay. So there's some portal commitments that we know about that should be public now by the time you're listening to this. They really should. And things will be a lot better in a sense. But I will say this to piggyback because I agree with you about your take on the schedule. Look, we talked about it earlier. The floor for this program should be 9 wins in the regular season. 8 wins really should be the floor, but you should finish up with 9 wins no matter what. And as you move to 9-game league schedule, 9 wins should be your floor, as a whole, because you got usually 2 cupcakes in a sense, got a good out of conference game. Okay. You figure out the league schedule, which SMU has been really good at figuring out. So the floor is 9 wins. I'm with you. I think they can win 10 games if things go the right way. I think they can win 11. I think they can be back in Charlotte. We've seen SMU, and it's so cliche, but man, the only team that we've really seen beat SMU is TCU, this year. I think like SMU has shot itself in the foot. Didn't show up, didn't do this, didn't do that. It's super cliche, but when this program has its attitude right going into a game, they're damn near unbeatable. They really are. So they limit mistakes. They do all those things. As Rhett Lashley likes to say, make themselves hard to beat. They'll be in great shape next year. But I'll say this. You look at last year's transfer bunch that SMU got into the program, and I think about some of the guys they brought in. And there were some guys that came up from the group of 5 or lower. Ymir Knight, stud. Shaq Spears, huge in his role. Wu Spencer was a nobody, but came from Louisville. Terry Webb, people were like, really taking to Texas State? No, we told y'all he was going to be good. You look at some of the guys that I would say did not pan out, and so many of them were the Power 5 guys. And I'm going to call this straight. People forget about Eric Taylor being here for a cup of coffee, but DeMarge Lewis from Purdue, who knows what his status is. He's not in the portal and all of that. But Trey Wilson, I hope Trey Wilson could figure it out, but he came from Baylor. DJ Warner was never consistent enough. He was a highly touted 4-star recruit who came from Kansas. Chris Johnson Jr. was inconsistent, but that home run hitter. Some of their bigger additions as far as where they came from didn't end up being the best players out of that class. At the same time, Addison Nichols, Josh Bates, shout out them for bringing it and being ready to go for the most part every single week. And Jeffrey Embo was pretty good. He's still kind of one of those weird raw cases from JUCO, not being from here. And so when SMU, and I've talked to a lot of people because I've hammered sources about this, and I've said, hey, when we talk during the season, it's kind of this last hurrah for Kevin Jennings. Let's not mess around here. And here's the thing I get back from people. They say, look, I get it. You want the this, the that from this Power 4 school that was a starter that was playing. Man, SMU's success stories have not been the guys that were highly, highly, highly touted and were from the SEC or from this or from that. They really haven't been. They've been a cast off like Elijah Roberts. There's been a Jared Harrison Hunt who they got late in a different era of the portal and a different era of NIL that they were able to just cherry on top, steal another Miami kid as Mario Cristobal was revamping his roster and instilling a different culture in his program. But now where they're hitting on these group of 5 guys that are hungry, that have some traits, that have production, that have started. Like it is very difficult to scout out the mental makeup of some of these guys that come from the portal. Like, I'm not going to name this player, but I'm just going to say a Power 4 transfer that SMU recruited during this transfer portal cycle. I've known him a while, talked to some people after the visit, and guess what? Hasn't changed because his shit don't stink still. And that's where SMU, they missed. They missed on a couple in that regard because you have to have guys that are bought into the team. And even if they're 1-year rentals and that type of a mindset, you still have to make sure that mindset fits for that 1 year. And everything's a 1-year kind of contract right now. So that's where, you know what? If they're going to bet on like Yannick Smith, dude, they've done their homework on the ECU wide receiver. I mean, there are SEC programs that are like, that guy is a beast. We loved him. We wanted him. But hey, maybe our wide receiver room is really good. We can't take him, but you should, because we saw him. We scouted him. He's ex wide receiver on our board. Coaches do talk like that. And we'll see how it works out. There are some things that I'm not, I think they should take another DB. I think they've got to find a way to, and maybe by the time this podcast drops, they've addressed some of these things. But man, the sky really is the limit for this team, and it might just not look exactly how you want it. And I'll go one further piece here. Like Ole Miss had the number 3 transfer portal class in the country this year. Their transfer portal class does not look as good without Trinidad Chambliss coming out of nowhere. So first and foremost, let's talk about that. Trinidad does what he does. Otherwise, they're losing 3 or 4 games with Austin Simmons at quarterback. But some of their top guys that ended up making a difference were all guys that were like just kind of cast like group of 5 guys, Taj Chambers or Jaden Yates played a lot. Those are 2 group of 5 guys. Ricky Fletcher was one of their backup corners who, really played a good bit. He came from South Alabama, and they didn't really have to take anybody on the defensive line for the most part. So, and they got a lot of guys who were kind of cast-offs, but they built depth. And SMU's built some depth up from the high school ranks. So trust that maybe that develops, and then they fill some of the holes with some hungry guys. I mean, half the Ole Miss offensive line is like group of 5 guys this year. Yeah. So there's multiple ways to skin a cat. You've still got to evaluate. You've still got to find those diamonds in the rough and trust that your systems on both sides of the ball will make them stars.
What I don't want to see in the portal is SMU compromises what Rhett Lashley has been able to build and grow, and from a culture standpoint, from a nobody is bigger than the team standpoint, all of those things. Additionally, I know SMU has deep pockets, but I don't want to go out and pay next year when Kevin's going to be gone. I don't want to pay a quarterback $6 million. I don't want to pay a wide receiver $3 million. I mean, that's ridiculous to me that some of these kids are asking for that. And what's worse is some of these schools are paying that. Nobody's worth that in college. I mean, they're just not, and if you think it is, I would advise you to look to the NFL and look at some of these guys that they are paying outrageous money to win 4 games.
Yep.
So you can do it. I mean, the Moneyball method. I mean, again, we're not going to be hurting for some of these recruiting dollars, but you can do it without just overpaying for some of these guys that are going to make your program worse.
And look, I mean, and I'll end with this because it's late and my voice is going, I think, a little bit too. But Amari Campbell goes to Penn State. Look at the season Penn State had. And Amari Campbell had a decent year for Penn State, but he was somebody that SMU was on, and Penn State came in kind of late. I think they got the next visit after that. And they tossed him a ton of money, and he ends up going there. But, Penn State has the season that they have. And, now he's in the portal. He's leaving. He had 100 tackles this year. But guess what? If Amari Campbell's here, one, how much of a difference does he make? Like, does he really make it the linebacker position? I mean, I'm just being honest, because guess what? Brandon Booker went out there and you found out who Brandon Booker was. And SMU was one of the better run defenses in the country. So some of these things that eventually this program has to have, which is guys, like you really can't, I don't know. You have to be all in on the portal, or you have to be all in on high school recruiting. And SMU is trying to be all in on high school recruiting and plugging holes. And eventually some guys got to play. And you look at corner the way it is right now, they're betting on the guys that are high school recruits to play next year. The guys that redshirted this year or played, a good bit, like Jay Holly and Zay Gentry. And it's on the coaches to make it work. That's why they get paid. So there's a lot they've got to figure out. There's no doubt. But there's a lot of reason to be thinking that, especially in this ACC and in the schedule that they have, they can go out and win 10 games again. They can get back to that level. So
I think they will. And I think that's why the commitment has been made to Coach Lashley of he's going to be the one that's going to help us navigate these waters in a constantly evolving college football. And to put a last little bow on top of this, I never considered hitting the transfer portal. It was open while I was at SMU, in 19, 20, and 21. Never really crossed my mind. I loved what we did here. And so the reason for me bringing that up, I think you have to go hard on these high school kids now, because you can rent a championship. Texas Tech proved that this past year. But if you're going to want to sustain success and build something more than just a flash in the pan, I think you're going to need to buy in for some of these high school kids. It is going to have to be more than what you think you need, from a sense of when you get these highly experienced offensive line and defensive line units, or you've got quarterbacks and receivers that have been together for 4 or 5 years, that's when you start making your money, man. That's when you've got some of these units that are just lethal when you need them to be. And again, you can plug and play guys as needed of, okay, we have a need at one of these group or one of these positions among a bigger unit, so one or two of the O-line or wide receiving core. But if you're able to hold on for some of these guys with their same teammates, same quarterback, etc., you're going to have a really, really special room by the time they're older.
And I'll add this, and then we're done here. But part of the reason why I like covering college football is I like to develop the relationships with the guys. And like when you walk out there on senior day and you see Turbo's parents, or you see Jonathan McGill's parents, or you see Justin Osborne's family, or you see, insert a bunch of different families that you've gotten to know. Next year it'll be like Alexander Kilgore and Kevin Jennings. That's cool to me. And they've still won a bunch of games here doing it this way. And there's one-year guys that are great too, and some maybe not so much. But like, there's still a little bit of that balance. And I really think that if guys give everything to SMU when they're here, they get way more on the back end than, and it doesn't mean they don't get paid, but like you could tell the guys that stuck around, you look at an E-Rob, coming in as a transfer, or you look at a Isaiah Wacobia, Ahmad Moses, James Prochet, guys like that. And man, it all pays off. And that's where it's cool to follow this team in this program. So I don't know if got to give that up a little bit right now until they figure out whatever type of guidelines are really going to be in place or not, then that's fine. I think, because I think SMU cemented itself as a major program in college football. If they keep winning the way they are, they're going to be that.
Yep.
So
something about legacy, man, when you're there for 5 years.
Yeah, that too. So, all right, everybody. Well, kept you long enough here, so we hope you guys enjoyed this edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. Hayden Howerton, buddy, I love doing this with you. So let's keep it rolling. We'll have a lot of fun in 2026. We're going to take this pod a bunch of different directions in the offseason in particular and have some fun with it. So we hope you guys enjoy it. Please like, rate, review, subscribe to the pod and to ontheponyexpress.com. For Hayden Howerton, I'm Billy Embody. We'll catch you guys next time.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU3 and on Instagram at On3SMU. And keep it locked to ontheponyexpress.com for more coverage.